Donald killed his GF while he was on PCP. But he didn't remember it. They tried hypnosis so he could remember, but didn't work out. He knows he did a terrible thing, but it's more like an intellectual knowledge, it's not a feeling or a memory. It appears to be a drug-induced amnesia. 4 years later, he came out of prison. He goes biking. And he gets hit by a car. He gets a massive head injury. He's in coma for 2 weeks. He has left-sided weakness, which means the biggest injury was in the right side of his brain. With frontal lobe contusions. And now, he remembers in florid detail of how he committed this murder. All due to deep seizure activity in his limbic structures, parts involved with emotions. The big question is, people like him, with head injuries, tumors, etc. are guilty for doing such things or not? Kent Keel has a van with an MRI scanner, and he images the brains of serial murderers. Does that mean those people were prone to do it for reasons of their early environment, or genes, or some incident that happened? Or, that is irrelevant, what count are the actions? How do you know what is true? Authority. Parents, teachers, etc. tell you. Repetition. If you hear something a lot of times you tend to believe it. A priori. Just by thinking through it, what possible, rational, etc. Scientific analysis. Hypothesis. Test things that are falsifiable. Probabilities, statistics. You can't prove something is true, but you can prove that it's not true. Etc. But also, there's another way of knowledge. Religion, philosophy, etc., things that science can't address. What's an experiment? Dependent variable. What you measure, the outcome. Independent variable. What you vary. Wilhelm Wundt did the first test of mental chronometry. Measuring how long it takes you to do things, to make a choice. He asked people to press a button when a light shows up, 0.20 seconds. Press a button when a red or green light show up, 0.29 seconds. Which means, it takes around 0.09 seconds to make a choice. John Watson. Behaviorism. The mind is unobservable, so we can only study behavior, and then we identify what in the environment influences those behaviors, similar between animals and humans. Stimuli, environment, response, behavior. But then, people said it's more about stimuli mind brain response. Correlation vs causation. You can look at correlations all the time. And experiments only allows us to infer causation. E.g. age of parent and risk for disease in child's. Down syndrome. Mother age 20 to 24, 1/1562. Age over 42, 1/19. Schizophrenia. Father age, less than 25, 1/141. Father age, more than 50, 1/47. E.g. 2. Are US college students more stressed than college students 10 years ago? Yes, they're at an all-time high level of self-reported stress. People have been giving the same questionnaire to college students for the last 30 years. Where women on average, report feeling more stressed. Higher rate of depression among women than men. Higher rate of autism among men than women. US college students have more empathy than college students 10 years ago. Same type of self-reported test. Showed 40% lower empathy today than 20 years ago. On average, college students are more stressed and less empathetic towards other. So, these things might be correlated. The broken window theory. In places where there's a lot of damage, like broken windows, graffitis, etc. People believe that rules don't count. So, it fosters the growth of petty crimes. And once you do a petty crime, you're more willing to do a major crime. Or, Freakonomics. Abortion legalized in 1973. Women least able to parent kids, that now have access to abortion, reduced the number of males ages 16 to 24 in poor communities. As a result, the crime rates went down fast. But, can we test that hypothesis? Experiment. If you see people around you breaking rules, are you more likely to do it? Independent measure, environment. Dependent measure, number of people who violate. So, they prepared an environment, they put a lot of bikes with a sign of no graffiti. In first scenario, the wall was clean. In the second scenario, the wall was full of graffiti. Then, while people went to do their things, they put a leaflet on their bike. Then, they watch how many people put the leaflet away. And how many throws it out. As a result, 33% threw it away, if the wall had no graffiti. And 69% threw it away, if the wall had graffiti. The problem is, that in experiments, you do a random recruitment. You discover something. And then generalize it to the broader group. But, The vast majority of subjects are between 17 and 25. But also, how normal are you when you do an experiment? Because you do things that not normally do. You're following orders, and you just keep barreling forward, just because it's an experiment. Also, experiments are never objective. E.g., tell students that rats are either bright rats or dull rats. But they are just rats. When the students test the rats, they will say the smart rats performed better. And just because you give them those instructions, they made the result to match up with what the expectation was. Confirmatory bias. When you look at stuff, if you see what you think confirms it, then you tend to go for that, even when there's evidence in front of you that could contradict your expectation. Embodied cognition. E.g. 1. If you meet somebody while you hold a cup of warm coffee, and you ask him to hold it, he's more likely to rate you as a warm person, than a cold person, and vice versa. E.g. 2. If you give somebody a cold pad, he's less likely to give $1 to a friend, 25%. If you give him a warm pad, he's more likely to give it to his friend, 54%. E.g. 3. The idea of cold makes you more self-reliant. The idea of getting money makes you less willing to get help, or to help others. E.g. 4. Dating behavior. Who's more willing to date, and who's more selective? Online dating, men 1.5x more likely to send email offering dates. Speed dating, 4 minutes, yes/no match cards, men make more yes responses. But this is because men do the rotations. If women are the ones who make the rotations, they got the same results as men does. And even a bit higher. Because, the fact of waking up, getting energized, feel romantic, feel chemistry, to do the physical approach, etc., makes women behave the same way as men does. Practical examples. If you are in a test, you're more likely to get the right answer if you come back and check the answers that you think are wrong in the first place. Interviews. Interviews for jobs, getting into college, etc., are useless, because the interviewers tend to like people like themselves. And it doesn't predict if they're going to perform well, or finish college, etc. Self-esteem. High self-esteem equals initiative and persistence, happiness and emotional resilience, narcissism and bullying. All proved by Rosenberg scale. But higher self-esteem doesn't lead to better things. E.g., most parents think that they need to praise their child so they level up their self-esteem. But if you praise somebody for his intelligence, the next time you give him a harder task, his performance declines. If you praise somebody for his hard work, his performance improves. If you praise nothing, his performance will not change. So, your genes and environment made you good at something. Or it's because you try really hard.